All right, it is 5:40 now. I apologize for the delay. We had to wrap up a earlier meeting. I think I am all ready from back here, and it looks like everyone in Zoom is on that needs to be.
All right, with that, we are reconvening from our 9 a.m. meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Colebrook,
Here.
Phyllis Clark here.
Thank you. So this morning we amended the agenda. We adopted the rules by the board and appointed a hearing officer. The next item on the agenda is public participation. I'm going to read out loud the rules for public participation. As a reminder, this is the Electoral Board hearing. Public comment via Zoom, except as hereinafter provided, the established and recorded rules for public comment pursuant to Section 2.06G of the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120 2.06G shall apply, except that the total time allocated to public comment shall be 30 minutes, and each speaker shall be permitted to speak no longer than 3 minutes. With that, I will ask those in the Zoom room to raise their hand, either with the button on the bottom right-hand corner or pressing *9. All right, it is 5:41. The first person up is John Kraft.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm disappointed that the electoral board can't follow the rules of the city and have 4 minutes per person of public comment. It's a little bit ridiculous, and I don't know what you guys are scared of to limit it to 3 minutes. Additionally, give me a second. I'd like to bring your attention to Section 2.02 of the Open Meetings Act. That says you cannot reconvene meetings without posting a 48-hour notice if you change the agenda. You amended the agenda, and then now you're reconvening the meeting. It says right here, the requirement of public notice of reconvened meetings does not apply to any case where the meeting was open to the public and it is to be reconvened within 24 hours, or an announcement of time and place that the reconvened meeting was made at the original meeting, and there is no change in the agenda. The original agenda posted 48 hours in advance of the first instance of you gathering together in a meeting has been changed with no further 48-hour notice. I'm asking that you comply with the Open Meetings Act, adjourn this meeting and repost a 48-hour notice with a proper agenda that you're not going to change. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Am I coming through clear?
Yes, we can hear you fine, sir.
Okay. So I'm here in support of Meghan McDonald as she runs for Ward 5. It's not my ward. However, I do happen to know Meg. I know who she is. I'm not someone who likes all of this. I don't like these meetings. I don't like none of this. But ideally, you would want somebody in a political seat that tends to be a voice for the people, that has the people's interests at heart. I've seen what she has done, and I know that she's real. But beyond all of that, goes to the person that put in this this contest of her ballot. And what I have just been informed of doesn't particularly sit well with me at all. A would-be candidate for that same seat in that same ward that was running for another office just a few weeks ago, which she lost. I asked a certain question, a direct question, and well, it took every bit of about almost 6 hours to get back to me, but an answer was given. Kind of a roundabout answer, maybe about 4 or 5 sentences. One would think that you could write something like that within a couple minutes on the toilet. But where those things tie in is that it turns out that the person who actually wrote that message was not this same candidate, but in fact was the person that is contesting Meg's ballot now, who apparently has really close ties to this candidate who opposes Miss McDonald. This act of collusion doesn't really serve anybody. Brings us here to waste tax dollars that could go to, I don't know, helping the homeless, feeding people, housing people, things of that nature. But yet we are here talking about the most arbitrary of so-called errors. I trust people that can stand up and say things from their own mouths and not be a puppet. Next.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is Coach V. Could you please state your name for the record? You are muted if you are trying to speak.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, Verdell Jones Jr.
All right, you may
And
proceed.
okay, yeah, I was just here on the behalf of Verdell Jones III, who's that's a part of this hearing on this evening. I know that there's seems to be some minor technicalities in terms of his opportunity to be able to run for mayor of Urbana, but just he's not somebody new to the party. A young man who grew up in Urbana, raised in Urbana, the Prairie Green Apartments. Went to Urbana through middle school, went to high school in Champaign, graduated. He's a native son of this community. But he saw through a program we started years ago, Fort Suey Leadership and Sports Academy, the power of serving the community. He was involved in many times where we fed the homeless, and we just did a lot of different outreach things in the community. And so him being able to witness that and be a part of that, that's a part of his DNA. And he has a desire, very ambitious desire to want to serve the community of Urbana. And I just wanted to just commend him for that, and to let you know that he's a special young man. He has a very bright intellect. He seems to have a finger on the pulse of really what people need. He's community oriented. He serves the community, and I think that this particular time, this is exactly what the community needs. Someone who is a breath of fresh air, someone who has a unique insight, a different perspective, one who has the ability to collaborate with others, to be able to garner other people's respect and attention to better serve the people. And I think that that's the key is to understand that these positions in community is not for the people to serve us, but that we have the opportunity to serve people. I'm the varsity basketball coach at Urbana, and that is our heart. That's what we believe in. How can we best impact the community? And so I just want to just talk on his behalf and just say that I think that what one of the things I've learned is that, you know, we're all human. And so we're all entitled to maybe decisions or, you know, maybe mistakes. You know, just as I witnessed on yesterday, there was a mistake made here with this council in terms of starting when they were not prepared to do that. And so there's a little technicality with him. And just as it was someone else that was associated with you all that gave you the information that, hey, this was not proper the way to do it. And there was no ill intent. It's just that sometimes you just don't know. And when you know better, you do better. And so it is the same thing with Verdell. And I just think that technicality such as that is just as you were given that same grace. I think he should be afforded the same grace to be able to have the kind of impact that I know that he can have for this community. Thank you for your time.
Do you want to go to the next speaker, Mary Alice?
My microphone is not on. I apologize. Austin Hoffman is next.
Hello, can you all hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Austin Hoffman. I'm an Urbana resident, and I'm here to voice my sincere support for Meghan McDonald and urge this board to approve her candidacy. As others have mentioned, this challenge is an insult to Meghan's integrity, but also to the intelligence and political views of the residents and voters in Ward 5 and in our entire city. It's a transparent power play to try and use an obscure and complicated legal process to maintain business as usual in local politics and to silence a progressive candidate by circumventing the democratic process altogether. In no way is it in the interest of the citizens of Urbana, and it is in fact detrimental to them. I cannot emphasize enough the absolute pettiness of this challenge to Meghan McDonald's candidacy. I'm just here to remind the board that it has an obligation to let the people of Urbana decide who represents them on the council and not to disqualify any candidate on such baseless and inconsequential evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input. The next person on the list is Christopher Hansen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christopher Hansen. I live in Urbana. I have to agree with some of the issues that were raised about the game that was being played with the different agendas for these meetings or this meeting. I think there must have existed at some point 3 different agendas for yesterday's meeting, which I guess was, it's hard for me to understand if today's 9 a.m. meeting was a different meeting or a continuation of yesterday's meeting. But the point was made about the agenda being changed and adding items, and that's an accurate point. And you can't just add items to an agenda within 48 hours of the meeting. The OMA is very clear on that. And if it was just rearranging the agenda, I think that would be okay. But I think the point to be made here is you guys got yourself into this sticky situation now where it does seem like an OMA violation. And if you had just allowed for the normal public input rules that the city of Urbana has adopted, we wouldn't be in this situation. But you've tried to change it in the agenda. And by the way, it isn't even clear to me that you changed the rules. I mean, that's an ordinance. I don't know that you can just write in an agenda that there's a time limit change and then just decide you're going to do that. It is a city ordinance. And it actually should be 5 minutes, not 4 minutes, because this is a physical meeting, not a virtual meeting. You're all sitting in the city chambers right now. So city code section 2.4 applies, not 2.5. And certainly not something that you just wrote on the agenda kind of on your own. So I don't know what you're going to do about that. I'd like to see these candidates, be able to just get through this and get past this process, because it's not good for them. It's not good for the voters of Urbana. But if I don't know why everything the city seems to touch always seems to have to go in the direction of trying to reduce public access. Why not just let people talk for 5 minutes? Why all these changes in the agenda and shenanigans that cause all this confusion? And I guess I'll try to spin this into a constructive point, which is if the board members on this electoral board can't even follow the very basic rules of the Open Meetings Act, then I wonder what expectations that you have of these candidates who are being challenged right now on the technicalities that have been raised by these objectors. And it was said yesterday that, this is the first time in 20 years that the city of Urbana has had to manage an electoral board hearing. And so there's an understanding that it isn't going to go all that smoothly. Well, these two candidates who are trying to run for office for the first time in their lives, maybe are do a little bit of that type of consideration. I don't see anything that's been done or said by these candidates that was.
Thank you for your input.
Change.
The next person up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Good evening. I'll briefly rehash some current points in case the meeting proceeds, instead of identifying that the OMA violations that were brought up constitutes having another meeting, which was simply that the statement of candidacy has two separate fields, one for office, one for district. And the actual primary petition does not list district, it lists office. So as far as the city is concerned, the office was correctly filled out because there's a separate section for district, and the objector did not object to the naming of the office on the statement of candidacy. So by their own admission, completely baseless. Now on to some other items. This is now being a drawn out process where the candidate who is being supported by the objector is losing support through this whole thing, while also wasting taxpayers' dollars. So one could, if they are the objector, withdraw their objection. And continuing to do so indicates not only the cynicism of the objection itself, but the actual deprioritization of the candidate who they espouse to support, while also wasting our tax dollars. So that's something that's food for thought. The other aspect is when James Simon, in the previous attempt at an electoral board meeting, listed the seniority of the city council members, there was an interesting factual error or omission about seniority on the city council, which is that Sharice has been on the city council longer than Bill Colebrook, unless if I'm mistaken. And so I think that there should be some comment at least on that as far as the process. The only other thing that I have to say is that Meghan is a special kind of organizer. Most people will actually just talk about how they have an email list that they inherited from someone else, and therefore they are an organizer. We see a lot of different organizations do that all the time, the useful idiot model of organizing. It's fun to watch. Meghan actually organizes on the basis of relationships and mutual aid. Doesn't take photos of the people that Meghan's helping, doesn't have some sort of look how great a person I am posts, look how great our organization is post. Meg has been doing this selflessly. And so I think that it's worth reflecting on the fact that this objection is now providing a platform where people can understand at length just how awesome an organizer and human being Meg McDonald is, to the contrast of the other candidate who has not at all advocated for this process to stop, which also shows their disregard for taxpayer dollars and the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is Tracy Chong.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong from Urbana. I'm speaking today to say that the objection by Wayne Williams against Meghan McDonald for the candidacy of Ward 5 should be dismissed. The objections given are petty and are not in the interest of the voters, as Wayne Williams claims. To seek to take McDonald's name off the ballot for petty technicalities such as the misspelling of the word Urbana and then arguing that this confuses the voters is just an insult to McDonald, the other candidates, the voters, and the democratic process. To claim the voters will be confused by what they are voting for because Urbana was misspelled or even just written in a way that it couldn't, bad handwriting or whatever. It's just about as insulting as it gets to the voters. This same concept goes for Williams' claim about McDonald not having written Ward 5 on her petition forms. This is just a meaningless claim as all McDonald's signatures came from Ward 5. The residents of Ward 5 can only sign a petition for Ward 5 and she can only run for the Ward 5 seat. So the correct thing for the board to do would be to allow the residents of Ward 5 to have the choice to vote for the candidate they support, which means allowing Meghan McDonald to be on the ballot. This whole objection seems like seasoned politicians trying to bully newcomers who just want to represent their ward and be a voice for their neighbors. The objectioner, Wayne Williams, a candidate himself, should be ashamed that he is playing this sort of games. I hope the board does the right thing and keeps the interests of the voters in mind. By the way, I think considering all the OMA rules that this board has broken, I think if there are more speakers who would like to speak that can fit within the 30 minutes, you guys should extend the public input time and allow everyone who wants to speak time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up to speak is Brian Dunn.
Hello, my name is Brian Dunn. I'd first like to just sincerely apologize that everyone who is in that room has to be in that room. As someone who later tonight is going to inject a medicine into my body that has a warning label on it for me to avoid contact with people who have contagious diseases, because this medicine will lower my ability to fight off infections. I have gone to great lengths over the past, however long this pandemic's been, to keep myself isolated, to keep myself safe. I have, turned down jobs. I have not taken back my job that I was furloughed from. I, have worked tirelessly to find a work at home job. My girlfriend has taken all these precautions, who I live with. It's affected both our lives greatly. And the fact that this meeting is in person is violent and discriminatory. If I was in Meghan's position, I would have to choose between risking my life or defending against these petty, minor technicalities. And so I apologize that all of you have to be there. I apologize that Meg has to be there. Whoever proposed this whole thing should be ashamed of themselves. They should recognize the violent act that it is, and they should do what they can to reduce the harm that they are causing, not only to the taxpayers, but also the physical harm that they are putting people in. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is Lena. Lena Walker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to speak briefly. I'm here in support of Meghan McDonald, and to say that the attempts to throw out her candidacy because of these very minor errors should definitely not go forward. I was one of the Ward 5 members that signed one of Meghan McDonald's petitions for her candidacy, and I was extremely grateful for the care and time that she took in explaining how to fill it out, how to sign it properly, her absolute conscientiousness in trying to follow everything by the book, because Meghan is so respectful of community members' time and energy, which is not something that you see in a lot of situations with government. And so, trying to throw this whole thing out because of very minor errors is frankly ridiculous. This past year, we've seen so many people coming to city council meetings for the first time. I'm one of them. Seeing people trying to find their way with, how to take an active part in their government. And seeing folks just discouraged and turned away in every possible turn. Megan's candidacy is definitely, in my opinion, a culmination of all of this community energy. She has been out at like every community event that I've seen, whether it's trying to support people with mutual aid, or just, reaching out to folks in the community that might be at risk for mental health. She is always there for us. And we're here to show up for her tonight. So yeah, that's all I have to say. And I hope to see council and the electoral board, do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is, can you pronounce your name? Haikia? Can you pronounce Haiki? I'm sorry. Can you pronounce
Haiki, yes.
your last name?
Haiki or Drake Mateer. I'm a Champaign resident, student at the U of I, calling in support of Meghan V. McDonald. I never thought I'd see the day where the revolution would scare the establishment so much that they will try to block access to a white individual who identifies as she, they, trying to actively stop them from even making ballot. Never thought I'd see the day where you all, the white establishment, would start to do that. But that speaks profoundly of the work that Meghan McDonald has done in Champaign County. 7, 8, 30 a.m., 9 a.m., outside the Champaign County Courthouse, out there in solidarity, fighting with coffee donuts for a Black woman named Aaliyah Lewis. 7:30, 8:30, 9:30 a.m., never missed a court case for Aaliyah Lewis. Never stopped to not ever think of not doing mutual aid for Aaliyah Lewis, mutual aid for other individuals that are in need. I can say with clear heart and clear conscience that Meghan V. McDonald is one of the greatest white allies here in Champaign County. And it is a shame that the city of Urbana is challenging Meghan from appearing on the ballot. Let the people choose. You shouldn't be that afraid unless you know that you are in the wrong. Let the people choose. If you think that Meghan is not supposed to be on the ballot because she might do this, that, and the other to city government, whatever, just put them on the ballot. Let the people choose. Isn't that what the white founding fathers talked about? Democracy, get to vote, get to choose. It's a shame. Such a shame that in 2020, after the biggest voter turnout for two white men as president, and you all are blocking Meghan, who has been out here in these streets, been protecting Black women, and anybody that protects Black women, they are an ally of mine, and I'm an ally of theirs. So I stand in solidarity with Meghan for Ward 5, and I stand in solidarity for revolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next person up is Lance Pittman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lance Pittman. I live in Urbana, and I've lived in either Champaign or Urbana since 2004. In all my years here, I've never seen anything like this, and it's absolutely outrageous, and I'm furious. To attempt to restrict ballot access to one of the best qualified candidates based on some very suspect, highly pedantic BS is beyond shameful. Who the hell cares if the word Urbana was spelled completely legibly in every instance on every single page of the petition? No one was confused about which ward Meghan was running in. And I've seen the petitions of all the other candidates, and most of them have plenty of instances of illegible handwriting. Why weren't those petitions challenged? This whole thing stinks like yesterday's diapers and COVID lockdown. It's an asinine and transparently cynical attempt by political insiders to unfairly disqualify a political opponent. This hearing is a three-ring circus sideshow of freaks in this hopeless effing hole we call CU, a bottomless pit of corruption and dirty tricks, and a complete waste of taxpayers' dollars. Please dismiss these petty, tiresome challenges and let the people of Ward 5 choose who their next representative will be. That concludes my prepared remarks, but since I have a little bit of time left, I just want to talk a little bit about Meghan, the candidate. I mean, you guys might be assuming like, oh, Meghan has all her longtime friends calling in. That's not the case. I've known Meghan less than a year, maybe less than 6 months. Despite that, I can say that I absolutely trust her. I absolutely think she is one of the best candidates in either Urbana or Champaign for city council. And Meghan, if you can hear this, don't let these people bully you. Keep fighting. Of course, I know you will. And I'll end with that. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. We have time for one more comment this evening, and I believe Heather Willis is next.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my last name is Wills, W-I-L-L-S.
My apologies.
No worries. I'm actually calling to support Meghan McDonald being removed from the ballot. I have been following this story and I'm very familiar with the tactics Meghan has also used to suppress voters, including social media intimidation. I truly believe that if your petitions are completed correctly, you should have the opportunity to run for office. But when information is not correct, it is not petty or a technicality, it is just merely wrong. And ballot petitions are standard and necessary to know who is voting for and representing a ward. And incorrect information just cannot be tracked properly. And it underscores the legitimacy of petitions. So I do support her being removed from the ballot and making sure that she is held to the same standards that other folks are. It has not been challenged in 20 years because folks are completing their ballots correctly. And we are here because information was completed incorrectly. That is the only way we could get here. If it was complete, if she was checking behind those ballots, as folks have said, she showed them how to complete ballots, but those ballots and those petitions, were not checked to make sure that information was correct. And it really causes us to question if she is able to complete her duties as a wardman if she is not able to complete the information just to get on the ballot correctly. So I do believe that she should be removed from the ballot, and you should continue to make sure that any candidate who is looking to get on the ballot completes their information correctly to make sure that all people of Urbana are correctly being represented by their legislators. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. Just for the record, I did allow public input to go over 2 minutes just because there was a little bit of technical difficulties there. At this time, the next item on our agenda is the public hearing. And for that, we have our hearing officer, Deanna Moole, who will be leading us through that.
Good evening. Okay, we are ready to call the first case in this matter. If the board would prefer that I address the Alma issue at all, I'm happy to do so, but otherwise we can just proceed with the case.
If it only takes a few minutes, that would be appreciated.
Well, just to address the sort of the questions about the Open Meetings Act issue, there was a revised agenda posted on Saturday that contained all of the items that are present in the revised amended agenda. Oh, can you not hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It looked like my mute button was on. Anyway, they were reordered and moved around a bit. And basically, I think almost everything, I'm trying to run a compare here, but I think that all of the items, including adoption of the rules, were there. They were just in a different order. So we have met the 48-hour requirement, but we also amended the agenda yesterday prior to recess. So I think that there's a little bit confusion. The statute, is probably a little bit difficult to read, but I think we're fine under OMA. Okay, is the bottom line. The agenda was amended yesterday morning. That amendment was reaffirmed this morning. And the agenda that was posted on Saturday, the revised agenda, included the items that we're considering today. The adoption of rules is on there. It's a procedural matter. I'm not sure you would have to even post it in an OMA agenda under case law. So I think we're fine to move forward. Okay, so let's call the first case. Do we have the parties present? Do we have list here? Do we have Mr. Langendorf or someone representing him present?
Just make sure that your microphone is on. Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Abe Matthew on behalf of Mr. Langendorf, and Mr. Langendorf is present via Zoom.
Okay, and then Burdall Jones III. Do we have someone present for Mr. Jones?
Somebody's approaching the desk. Are you Mr. Jones? Okay. Mr. Jones is approaching. I'm sorry, who did you say was on Zoom?
The objector, Mr. Langendorf, Michael Langendorf.
Oh, can that person be added as a participant from the webinar?
I've just added him now.
Thank you. I'm not sure what you can see, Deanna, but we have two individuals here, one representing, can we just restart and state your names for the record? I apologize.
Abe Matthew on behalf of Mr. Michael Langendorf, the objector in this matter.
Thank you.
Burdall Jones III.
Thank you.
Do either of you have preliminary motions that you would like to present in this matter?
I have none.
Mr. Jones, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay, so we are ready to proceed with the objector's opening statement. So Mr. Matthew, you may go forward.
Thank you to the hearing officer and the members of the board for allowing us to be here today. My name is Abe Matthew, and I'm here on behalf of the objector. And the respondent candidate's nominating paperwork must be stricken for two main reasons. First, the evidence will indicate that the respondent has not resided in Urbana for the 1 year period of time prior to the consolidated election required by statute, and thus not long enough to serve as mayor. And second, the paperwork filed by the respondent does not meet the requirements set forth in the election code for entry into a Democratic primary or any other party's primary for that matter. On the first point, the evidence will show that the respondent candidate has not resided in Urbana for a year. And by the time of the election, he will not have resided in the city of Urbana for a year. You'll see that section 5.3.1-10-5 of the Illinois Municipal Code governs the qualifications for the office of mayor of the city of Urbana. That section provides that a person is not eligible for municipal office unless that person is a qualified elector of the municipality and has resided in the municipality for at least 1 year next preceding the election or appointment. Thus, no person may run for mayor of Urbana unless they have lived in Urbana for at least 1 year preceding the consolidated election, which will be held on April 6th of 2021. Therefore, no person who moved to Urbana after April 6, 2020 is eligible to be placed on the ballot for office of mayor in the city of Urbana, Illinois, as they will have resided in Urbana for less than a year by the time of the election. You will hear evidence that the respondent candidate is not eligible for the office of mayor, including evidence that the respondent candidate was registered to vote at 2405 Carisbrook Drive in the city of Urbana until October 11 of 2020. That the respondent candidate voted in the March 17 Democratic primary while residing at that address. That he moved from his residence, that if the respondent moved from his residence in the city of Champaign, then he was required by law to change his address and his voter registration, therefore, within 10 days. And that the respondent did not provide the Secretary of State's office with notice that he moved to the city of Urbana until October of 2020 and did not change his voter registration until October of 2020. And additionally, that the evidence will indicate that he moved to the city of Urbana until at the earliest June of 2020 when he purchased a house at 107 Meadow Drive in the city of Urbana. On the second point, as to entry into the Democratic primary, you will hear evidence that the nominating paperwork put forth by the respondent does not meet the requirements set in the election code for entry into the Democratic primary or any party's primary. Section 7-10 of the election code provides that the name of no candidate for nomination shall be printed upon the primary ballot unless a petition for nomination has been filed on his behalf as provided in this article in substantially the following form. And then the section goes on and it provides the form of the petition for nomination and the nominating papers that are required. Both a statement of candidacy and petition signed by voters are required by Section 7-10. Now, both of these are defective in this case. As to the statement of candidacy, Section 7-10 requires, in relevant part, that this statement shall set out the address of the candidate, the office for which he is a candidate, and shall state that the candidate is a qualified primary voter of the party to which the petition relates and is qualified for the office. And it further provides that the statement of candidacy shall request that the candidate's name be placed upon the official ballot and shall be subscribed and sworn to by some officer. And it goes on with further formalities from there on. We will submit evidence at this hearing that the statement of candidacy is fatally flawed as it does not comply with the requirements set forth in Section 7-10. And these are the following points that I'd like to make. You will hear evidence that the statement of candidacy fails to specify the party whose nomination the respondent candidate is seeking. It fails to specify that the respondent candidate is a qualified primary voter of the party to which the petition relates. It fails to specify that the respondent candidate is a qualified primary voter of the Democratic Party. And it fails to request that the respondent candidate's name be placed upon the official ballot for the nomination of the Democratic Party for the office of mayor of the city of Urbana. Finally, the statement of candidacy requests that the respondent's candidate's name be placed upon the official ballot for a purported but non-existent, nonpartisan election to occur on April 6 of 2021. As to the petition sheets themselves, Section 7-10 requires, in relevant part, that each petition sheet shall, other than the statement of candidacy, shall be uniform, shall contain the space for signature, and shall contain above the space for signatures an appropriate heading giving the information as to the name of candidate or candidates in whose behalf the petition is signed, the office, the political party represented, the place of residence, and the heading of each sheet shall be the same. It also requires that at the bottom of each of these sheets, there's a circulator statement, which certifies to the best of his or her, and the person signing the circulator statement is making the certification, just so we're clear. It's a certification that to the best of his or her knowledge and belief, the person so signing were at the time of signing the petitions, qualified voters of the political party for which a nomination is sought. We will submit evidence at this hearing that the petition sheets that were submitted by the respondent candidate are fatally flawed because they do none of these things as it relates to the political party upon which the respondent candidate is requesting to be placed on the ballot for. They fail to specify the political party that the respondent candidate wishes to enter the primary for. The petition sheets fail to petition for the respondent candidate to be a candidate of the Democratic Party for nomination for the office of mayor of the city of Urbana on February 23, 2021. And the petition sheets petition for the respondent candidate to be a nonpartisan candidate for election on April 6, 2021. You will also hear evidence that none of the purported signers of the sheets identified the political party that they are members of and affiliated with, the political party which they are qualified primary electors of. They did not state that they are members of and affiliated with the Democratic Party. They did not state that they are qualified primary electors of the Democratic Party. And finally, you will hear evidence that the circulator statement does not comply with section 7-10, specifically that the petition sheets fail to include a circulator statement certifying that the persons were qualified voters of the Democratic Party or qualified voters of a political party. Now, to make all of that simple, essentially, the circulator, the statement of candidacy, and the petitions were filed in with a nonpartisan heading, as you will see in the petitions. Nowhere in any of the petitions or the statement of candidacy does it relate to the Democratic Party. In fact, in the entire candidate packet, the only place that says Democratic is the receipt that was given to the respondent candidate, which is not part of the nominating paperwork per the statute. So at the end of this hearing, we're going to ask you to hold that pursuant to section 5-3 or 5/3.1-10-5 of the Illinois Municipal Code, the respondent candidate is not eligible for the elective office of mayor of the city of Urbana. We'll ask you to hold that the nomination papers are invalid in their entirety as they were confusing to voters as to the nomination and the party and the office sought. We will ask you to hold that the nomination papers are invalid in their entirety as they denied the persons who signed the petitions information as to the political party sought by the respondent candidate. And that's all I have, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, would you like to give us an opening statement?
I am here to pursue my candidacy for the office of mayor in the city of Urbana. I am running to focus the city's attention on a pandemic that no singular party or person is exempt from. The foundation of our youth's future is actively crumbling due to our community's current climate. If real change is not made right now, it is this secondary pandemic of failure of education and support for our youth that will have a long-lasting negative impact. I grew up in Urbana, Illinois, where I attended Prairie Elementary, now known as Dr. Preston Williams Elementary, as well as Urbana Middle School, before my family decided to move to Champaign for my remaining years of schooling. I was actively involved in basketball and youth programs in Urbana community that gave me opportunities to travel all over the U.S. and gain many new experiences. I was blessed to graduate from college, where I became a 4-year Letterman winner at Indiana University. After graduating, I was fortunate enough to receive the opportunity to live abroad and play professional basketball at places like Greece, Japan, France. I was also able to live and play professionally in Santa Cruz, California. Now, while I cherish these memories of traveling the world and immersing myself in different cultures, I always knew that there was a greater purpose for me that lie in serving my community that I grew up in here in Urbana, Illinois. Upon moving back to Urbana-Champaign, I became highly disheartened by the current state of the youth in our community. The regression of our young people, coupled with the lack of opportunity and resources provided to them, motivated me to start a nonprofit comprised of majority Urbana children that would help steer them towards greater accomplishment. Now, as a citizen, I found it extremely difficult to gain support from local governing bodies, Urbana included, which are more focused on profits as well as responding to the current situations, rather than working towards prevention of the now out of control decline in education and the increase in violence that is predominantly affecting our youth right now. How can we not take the blame for our current climate when we as adults have provided nothing for our Urbana youth to use that can better themselves and their futures? I'm seeking to be an ally. I'm seeking to be a mayor as an ally to those who put our youth and communities' well-being first, Urbana's youth and communities. I am here to be a voice for our teachers, our first responders, and our dedicated parents who want to see a better future for their children in Urbana. I am here because I believe in democracy and the undeniable rights of an ordinary citizen like myself and like Meghan to be able to run for public office without the bullying.
Sir, can I ask you to move your mask up? Thank you.
Without the bullying and dirty politics from the establishment. I am not here asking for change, but to be the driving force for the positive change that the city of Urbana needs.
Sir, did you want to comment on the petitions at all or on the objections at all?
I will in my case.
Okay. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. I have a verified objectors petition consisting of 11 page. No, it's got exhibits on it. I don't have page numbers on it. I have an objector's petition consisting of approximately 11 pages that has an Exhibit A on it, which I believe are the receipt, statement of candidacy and nominating petitions for Mr. Jones. It has an Exhibit B on it, which I'm not quite sure what that is, perhaps a voting card. Has an Exhibit C, which also looks like a voting document, registration type document, and has Exhibit D, which is a deed transferring ownership of a house to Mr. Jones, it would appear. So I would like to label this as Exhibit 1 for ease of reference, if that parties can agree to that.
That's acceptable to me.
And then I do not have the original petitions. I'm assuming that the clerk's office does, but we do have a copy of those. Perhaps if I could correct the record, perhaps we should label the actual petition, the statement of candidacy and the actual petitions will be Exhibit 1. The objection and its exhibits will be Exhibit 2. Is that acceptable to the parties?
Yes.
Any objection, Mr. Jones?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we've been through opening statements. We're ready for the objector to present their case regarding the petition.
Just one housekeeping question. Because we're social distancing, do you have a copy of the objection, sir?
I do, yes.
Okay, and you have all the attachments basically?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Our first witness is Mr. Verdell Jones.
Mr. Jones, do you promise to, or affirm to, or swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, you have a copy of the petitions in front of you, and that's Exhibit 1, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Jones, until October of 2020, is it correct that you were registered in Champaign?
That is correct.
And you were registered at the address of tw- 2405 Carisbrook Drive in Champaign, Illinois, correct?
I believe so. That's what you found.
And you were registered at that address when you voted in the March 17, 2020 Democratic primary, correct?
I believe so.
And you purchased a house in Urbana in June of 2020, is that correct?
That's incorrect.
When did you purchase the house in Urbana?
Me and my wife purchased it in July.
Okay. And prior to that time, you lived at the address in Champaign, correct?
Incorrect.
What address did you live at?
I have to go back through my records and look through all my contracts. I lived overseas.
Okay. But not in Urbana, correct?
I did have a residence while I was home in Urbana as well. that I
Okay.
was renting from.
But you were registered in Champaign, correct?
I believe that's what the paperwork says.
And you purchased a truck this summer, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And that truck is registered at the Champaign address, correct?
I am not sure. I have to double check on that.
It's not registered in Urbana, correct?
My residence in Urbana was not yet acquired. No.
And you changed your driver's license in October of 2020 and updated the address, correct?
I have not yet. No, due to COVID reasons.
So what does your driver's license currently say?
You want me to go to the car and get it?
No, I'm just asking.
I believe it says 2405 Carisbrook Drive.
Okay. So you didn't update your driver's license. You just updated your voter registration in October.
Yeah, unfortunately, due to COVID reasons, the ability to go get my driver's license changed was challenged.
So turning your attention to exhibit number 2, actually strike that. Turning your attention to exhibit number 1, which is your petitions. Do you have that in front of you?
Right here, yeah.
And the first sheet that I have, just so we're clear for the hearing officer, is the receipt for filing in the office of the city clerk.
This.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you would turn your attention to page number 3. And let me know when you're there.
Is there a page number?
It'll be the 3rd page in the packet. It says statement of candidacy.
Is this what we're referring to?
2, 3.
If you have a copy, it's double-sided, so it would be, I don't know how yours is done.
There we go.
All right, you have the statement of candidacy in front of you.
Yes, sir.
Now, at the top of that statement of candidacy, it says nonpartisan, correct?
Correct.
Does it state anywhere on this statement of candidacy the party in which you are seeking to enter the primary?
It does not.
Does it state which party you are a qualified primary voter of anywhere on this statement of candidacy?
Say that again. Sorry.
Does it state that you are a qualified primary voter of any party on this statement of candidacy?
No, it does not.
Does it specify that you are a qualified primary voter of the Democratic Party?
No, it does not.
Does it request that your name be placed upon the official ballot for the nomination of the Democratic Party for the office of mayor of the city of Urbana?
On the statement of candidacy, it does not.
And in fact, it asks that you be placed on the ballot for an election to be held on April 6th of 2021. And that's essentially it as to where you would like to be placed on the ballot, correct?
Sure.
I'm going to turn your attention to the next page, which is the first page in your petitions. At the top of this page, it states nonpartisan petition, correct?
Yes, sir.
And nowhere on this page does it state that you wish to be strike that. Nowhere on this page does it state that you wish to enter the primary as a Democrat, correct?
No, sir.
And in fact, it asks for you to be a nonpartisan candidate, correct?
Yes, sir.
And nowhere on this page do any of the signers of this sheet identify the political party that they are members of or affiliated with, correct?
No, sir.
And they do not identify the political party that they are qualified primary electors of, correct?
No, sir.
And they don't state that they are members of and affiliated with the Democratic Party, correct?
No, sir.
And it does not state, strike that, they do not state that they are qualified primary electors of the Democratic Party, correct?
Correct.
I'm turning your attention to the bottom of this page, the area above where you signed. This is what's called a circulator statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
And nowhere in the circulator statement does it state that you believe that these folks who signed are qualified voters of the Democratic Party, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't identify which political party they are qualified voters of.
Correct.
And as you go through each of these sheets from one all the way to the end, the same holds true as to the lack of any identification of a political party, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that goes for the top where it doesn't state on any of the sheets which political party you wish to represent.
Yes, sir.
And strike that, all of the petition sheets ask for you to be a nonpartisan candidate for election on April 6, 2021, correct?
Yes, sir.
And none of them in that, the sheets, none of the sheets petition for you to be a candidate of the Democratic Party for nomination to the office of mayor of the city of Urbana on February 23, 2021, correct?
Correct.
And the same for the signers of the sheets. They do not identify the political party that they are members of or affiliated with, correct?
Correct.
The political party that they are qualified primary electors of.
Oh, yeah, correct.
They do not identify that they are members of and affiliated with the Democratic Party.
Yep.
They do not identify that they are qualified primary electors of the Democratic Party. Correct?
Correct.
And all the circulator statements lack any statement certifying that the persons who signed were qualified voters of the Democratic Party. Correct?
Correct.
And they also lack a statement certifying that the persons who signed were qualified voters of any political party. Correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Jones, would you like to present evidence at this time?
Yes, I will. Truth is, board, I haven't lived in Urbana for just 1 year. I have spent about a third of my entire life living in Urbana. Prior to moving to Urbana-Champaign permanently, I was living 10 months out of the year abroad, working as an overseas basketball player. Now, I kept my address at the address of my parents, but I've been living there for years in order to avoid issues with receiving very important and essential documents in mail, which I regularly received, even when I was spending most of my time abroad. I moved back to Champaign County about 3 years ago, and I wanted to wait till I had settled down to change my mailing and voting address from my parents' home to my new permanent home. Now, during that time, I was fortunate enough to meet my wife, and we found a home in Urbana that was truly our dream home. From the start, we called it our forever home. And this goes back to my original mention of truly wanting to serve a community that I see as having boundless potential. I've spent time working with the local elementary schools like King and Preston Williams, providing the youth with
Sorry,
leadership
Mr.
and
Matthews,
fitness
what are you
programs.
showing us? Because I can't see it at all.
They don't have any cameras, I believe.
I wish you were here.
Well,
The
I
hearing officer
suppose,
should be,
yeah.
but I'll continue.
Well, Mr. Matthews, what I'm asking is that something you would like as an exhibit and entered into evidence? Or
This is for the board and for people who are here to see. If you can't see it, don't worry about it.
well, sir, if you want to admit it into evidence or show it to the board, you have to show it to your opponent and we have to mark it as an exhibit.
Can you see it? Where's your?
So just describe it for me, please.
It's me legit leading a class at Preston Williams Elementary and King Elementary School.
Okay, so it's a picture of you leading a class at the elementary school. I'll have access to it later, sir.
Okay. Am I going to continue to get interrupted for every picture I post?
Well, sir, every time you present an exhibit to a tribunal, it has to be marked and the other side has to see it so we can see if they have any objections to it.
Absolutely.
So I'm about to ask Mr. Matthews if he has any objections to that picture.
I have none.
Okay, so now you can use it, Mr. Jones. I apologize.
Okay, here we go again.
Sorry, it's a court, it's a semi-court proceeding.
Yeah, technicalities, we understand. In 2018, for the court to see, I teamed up with my father to help the Urbana Tigers high school basketball team win a regional championship.
Okay, so that's exhibit 4, and it's, I assume, of the Urbana basketball team with you.
Yes,
ma'am?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I stood shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with those who marched in Urbana and cried out in pain over the death of George Floyd and other local cases that hit home.
And so that's a picture of
the march.
the march. Okay. And did you show that to opposing counsel? I'm sorry.
Yes, everyone saw it.
Okay. Are there any objections to, Mr. Matthews, do you have any objections to what I'm labeling as exhibit 4, which is the basketball team photo, and exhibit 5, which is the march photo?
No.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
my youth foundation that I previously started, majority filled with Urbana youth from all backgrounds and cultures, is part of my Urbana legacy.
Okay, so this is Exhibit 6, and this is your youth basketball team.
It's my youth foundation.
Oh, through your foundation. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, people, I've been going to the Sweet Corn Festival for as long as I had teeth to eat corn. It's true I have not lived in Urbana for the last 1 year. The truth is that I lived in Urbana collectively for about 10 years and plan on being here until I've done everything I can do to better service people. Now, my background is one primarily in professional and business. And this is the first time in my life that I've decided to apply for a position to service my community in a government post. Filing a nonpartisan petition form, it was an honest error on my part. Once I realized my error, due to restrictions of our current pandemic and the approaching deadline, I would not have been able to submit any paperwork on time to be in a position to run. Now, while the form I submitted was under the incorrect heading, the 43 signatures on my petition are from citizens of Urbana who clearly understood who I am and why I was running for the position of mayor. Collecting these signatures alone allowed me to exposure to a community made up of so many diverse groups that want change. Business leaders desiring more avenues for economic growth in Urbana. Families who have been in the community for years and have witnessed firsthand the rapid decline of once thriving neighborhoods. The first responders, it's on my petition, wanting a safer environment to serve the community in. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, our teachers desperately seeking assistance in a classroom during an unparalleled time in education for our community's youth. I believe in the representation and that their voices should be heard. We are at a time in history where these voices can't be muffled by dirty politics or technicalities. I asked the board to at least allow me to resubmit the required signatures on the appropriate form. We don't have time to let technicalities as low as simple misspellings be the reason why more representation isn't available on the ballot, especially with a glaring error on the verification form that was signed by the notary and the objector as being an issue in Cook County. Isn't this a Champaign County issue? There's 100 miles between Champaign and Cook County, and yet we have a Cook County on our verification form. Let's not let out-of-town politics direct the direction of our city of Urbana. That is it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, the objector, do you have any rebuttal testimony?
Mr. Jones, when was the last time you went overseas?
I was overseas in 2017.
Okay. So from 2017 until you bought your house, you resided in Champaign, correct?
Incorrect.
I have nothing further.
Okay. Mr. Jones, did you have any additional rebuttal testimony related to what Mr. Matthews just raised?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll now take closing arguments from both sides. We'll start with the objector.
If I could just point out, I don't know if Mr. Jones has rested yet.
Oh, I believe he said he was finished. Mr. Jones, I want to double check. Are you finished? Did you have any additional evidence?
You heard me correct. I was done.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Matthews, you may proceed with your closing argument.
To the hearing officer and the members of the board here, the what you've just heard is clear. The respondent candidate has not resided in Urbana for the year required by statute by his own admission. Now, despite his community involvement and good works, which are all commendable and laudable and maybe something that can serve him in the future, they do not qualify him as a resident of the city of Urbana. The fact is that all the evidence today indicated that no earlier than June of 2020 did the respondent candidate move to Urbana for the purposes of the Illinois Municipal Code. He was registered in Champaign. He stated that he was traveling throughout the world and kept an address. However, he kept that address as his voter registration address. And the only time and the only evidence that we heard of that changing, of his legal residence changing, indicates that that's in June of 2020. So therefore, under the municipal code, he's not qualified to serve as mayor at this time. On the second point, the respondent candidate admitted that he did not fill out the paperwork correctly for the Democratic primary. And in terms of how that interacts with the statute, the fact is that we are here to determine who is qualified to go into the Democratic primary. This is a issue and a matter which is internal to the Democratic Party and who will be on the ballot for the Democratic Party on February, at the February election. And by his own admission, none of the paperwork indicated anywhere in it that he was intending to run as a Democrat. And so Section 7-10 dictates that his name is not to be printed on the ballot for the Democratic primary in February because he simply has not indicated that he was running as a Democrat. That's the fact of the matter. So with that, we're asking that his name be stricken, or that his statement of candidacy and his petitions be stricken, and that his name not be printed on the ballot for the Democratic primary. And we don't believe that he would qualify for any other primary, but the main focus here is that he is not qualified for the Democratic primary.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
We are at a pivotal time in our history to where we need to make lasting change that will positively redirect the course that we as a community desperately need. I'm not here making a political statement or someone seeking attention or fame. I've had it. It's empty. It's vain. But I'm here as a citizen who shares the concerns, an Urbana citizen who shares the concerns and sentiments of my fellow urbanites. Someone who cares about the opportunity and resources for our youth. Someone who will diligently work to unite a fractured community. I am running as someone who enjoys the simplicities of Urbana while encouraging local business growth that expands the spirit of what Urbana is. I'm seeking to be on the ballot as a mayor, to be a voice for the diverse cultures who have adopted Urbana as their home. To be a leader, as someone who can lead a fully funded first responders team that can ensure the health and safety of all of our citizens. I am running to be on the ballot for mayor of Urbana, not as a radical movement, but as a local boy who grew up in the neighborhoods of this town and who understands its potential and is willing to put every bit of effort to ensuring that this is a town that we are all proud to be a part of. I am not arrogant in believing that this task will be easy, but I'm humble enough to understand that the voices of the people being heard will guide us to create a better community. I ask you that I am allowed to represent these voices. I am allowed to represent the voices of the community as a candidate for the Democratic Party. And if I am denied that right, I ask the panel to at least respect and uphold the core essence of the democratic process and reject at least the petty objection that was brought forth on Ms. McDonald's petition. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you both for a well-presented case. I just want to make sure we've got for the record for the board's consideration. I had 6 exhibits, I believe, admitted into evidence without objection. Is that correct by both parties?
Is that including or not including the packet, or did that automatically come into evidence?
So exhibit 1 would be the petitions. Exhibit 2 would be the verified objection and the attachments. Exhibit 3 was Mr. Jones leading a class at King Elementary, I believe was the correct location. Exhibit 4 was him working with the Urbana basketball team, high school team. Exhibit 5 was the march after the George Floyd incident that was held in Urbana, and Exhibit 6 was his youth basketball team related to his community foundation. Is that correct?
Also, I'd like to point out that the verification form that was signed by Mr. Langendorf in the Notary Public was under the County of Cook instead of Champaign.
Mr. Jones, I understand you're raising that issue. It's a little bit out of order at this point. I think you could have asked about it during your case.
I brought that up.
You brought it up in your closing, but that's not evidence.
No, ma'am, I didn't. I brought it up at the end of my. I brought it up at the end of my statement or my presentation.
Even irrespective of that, I think that we have the evidence in this matter sufficient to render a decision. I would just indicate to you that there's remote notarization now that we have COVID, and there's some changes in the law. And I'm not sure if you had asked questions about it, if that would have been the answer or not. That's pure speculation, but I'm not sure that we have testimony in the matter, which will control over any written pleadings anyway. So.
Can I interject for a second, Deanna? There's also exhibit B, C, and D that you didn't list.
Those are part of the objector's petitions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they were in.
Certainly, and the petitions are actually attached there, as an exhibit also. That's exhibit A. So we have the two first objections that I took notice of were the exhibit 1, which was the actual filed petitions, and exhibit 2, which was the packet that was the objector's petition. Okay.
I don't understand how if we're focusing on minute details and headlines, how this could be overlooked.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, Mr. Jones.
I said I don't understand how if we're searching for small technicalities and headlines, how the fact that this verification was in Cook County can be overlooked.
I understand your concerns, but we've taken testimony in this matter, and we've had closing arguments. I'll note for the record that you raised the issue. Okay. All right. So I think that our next case to be called is, we'll take this under, well, it's the board's preference. We had this discussion of the 2 cases, I think, at the end of the agenda. So if we can move on to the second case at this time, I think that would be in accordance with the agenda as adopted. So if we can call case number 2020-2, which is the Williams objection to the McDonald petitions, and get the parties' appearance on the record for those. Who's appearing on behalf of the objector, Wayne Williams Jr.?
Abe Matthew on behalf of the objector, Mr. Wayne Williams.
And then who's appearing on behalf of Meghan McDonald?
I'm representing myself.
I'm sorry?
I'm representing myself.
Okay. Are you sitting up front? I'm sorry, I can't see from here.
I am. I'm sitting up here in the front.
Okay, super. Thank you. I apologize. I have a shot of the back of the room or from the back of the room. Okay, let's go through before we start this matter. Let's see if we can go ahead and take care of the first 2 exhibits in this or would the parties prefer that you do your openings first, or can we go ahead and just take care of the two first exhibits?
We could just take care of the two exhibits.
All right,
That'll be
let's do that. That would be my preference. Okay, so exhibit number 1 will be the nominating documents relating to the candidacy of Meghan McDonald. That consists of a receipt for filing, a receipt for, I believe, this is a statement of economic interest filing receipt from the county clerk's office, a statement of candidacy, and then 11 pages of petitions that have been circulated with varying amounts of signatures. Did parties agree that that accurately reflects Ms. McDonald's nominating petitions?
yes.
Yes.
Is there any objection to those being labeled and admitted as Exhibit 1 in this proceeding?
No.
No objection.
Thank you. Okay, Exhibit 2 then would consist of the verified objector's petition and its exhibits. The objector's petition consists of 5 pages and a notarization page, and then the Exhibit A attached to that is actually the same, the contents of Exhibit 1, and that would be the total of Exhibit 2. Can both parties agree that that's Exhibit 2 and that it's appropriate for entry into evidence? Is there any objection?
No.
No.
Thank you. So we have those 2 exhibits admitted into evidence in this proceeding. And now we'll begin with opening arguments. Mr. Matthews, if you'd like to proceed on behalf of Mr. Williams, who I assume is the gentleman sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to the hearing officer as well as the members of the board. My name is Abe Matthew. I'm here on behalf of the objector, Wayne Williams, who's sitting to my left. The respondent candidate's nominating paperwork must be stricken because the respondent's paperwork failed to apprise the persons who signed them of the office she was seeking. The election code is clear in stating that the name of no candidate shall be printed upon a primary ballot unless a petition is filed in the form given in Section 7-10. Section 7-10 is very clear about the requirements placed upon the candidate and the requirements placed upon the person circulating and signing those petitions. As for candidates, the section requires that each sheet of the petition, other than the statement of candidacy and the candidate's statement, shall be of uniform size and contain above the space for signatures an appropriate heading giving the information as to the name of the candidate or candidates in whose behalf the petition is signed, the office, and the political party represented in place of residence. And the heading of each shall be the same. As to circulators and signers, Section 7-10 states that such petition shall be signed by qualified primary electors residing in the political division for which the nomination is sought, in their own proper persons only, and opposite the signature of each signer, his residence address shall be written or printed. As to the certification required by persons who are circulating the petitions, it requires they certify that to the best of their knowledge and belief, the persons still signing were at the time of signing the petitions qualified voters of the political party for which a nomination is sought. And that statement is supposed to be notarized. The crux of this case is whether the petition sheets comply with Section 7-10. Now, the purpose of nominating petitions signed by voters is to expand the informed participation of members of the respective political parties in their primary election. Nominating petitions should be free from a basis for confusion as to the office for which they are filed. And that's from the Zaplowski case, which is cited in our petition. A potential signatory to a nominating petition has the right to know the specific vacancy sought by the candidate so that the signatory may make an informed decision to sign the petition or support another candidate for the same vacancy. That's from the same case. In determining whether a candidate has complied with Section 7-10, there was a case called Lewis, which set forth 2 requirements. First, nominating papers as a whole must not create a basis for confusion as to the office sought. Second, the purpose of the nominating paper that contains the incorrect office must not have been frustrated because of that error. In this case, both of those requirements or both of those factors have indicate that there is a basis for confusion as to the office sought, and the nominating paper frustrates the purpose of the paper, or the error frustrates the purpose of the paper. So, in this matter, we will produce evidence that the petitions create a basis for confusion in the following ways. They fail to specify the office for which the respondent candidate is seeking the nomination of the Democratic Party. We will show that each of these sheets only lists aldermen, but fails to specify which aldermanic district the respondent candidate seeks nomination in. We will show that none of these sheets inform signers that the respondent candidate is seeking the nomination for the 5th ward of the city of Urbana, and that's specific to pages 4 and 7 of the packet and pages 9 to 14 of the packet. That the respondent candidate's nomination paper number 5 fails to comply because it lists Urban City Council Ward 5 alderman, which is not an office for which a candidate will be nominated at the primary, and that sheets 1 through 4 and 6 through 11 fail to comply with the requirement that the signatures are of qualified primary electors residing in the political division office, the political division sought by the respondent candidate, because each of the sheets fail to specify the political division in which the respondent candidate is seeking office in. We will produce evidence that the purpose of these petitions have been frustrated because of these errors, namely that it frustrated the informed participation of members of the respective parties in their primary election. So to boil it down, essentially the failure to issue or to inform the voters of the specific vacancy that the respondent candidate was seeking, and in informing them and in failing to list the ward number or putting different offices, created a clear basis, as will be shown by case law, as well as decisions of boards of elections. They created a clear basis for confusion, and that these inconsistencies also frustrate the purpose of the nominating petitions, which is to let people who are part of a political party decide who they want to nominate or where. And so at the end of this, we will ask all of you to enter a decision striking the nominating paperwork of the respondent, as well as and not placing her name on the ballot.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Ms. McDonald, would you like to give your opening statement, please?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Meghan McDonald, and I first want to thank you for gathering here today to take the time to ensure accessibility and validity on the Urbana City Council Ward 5 ballot. I also want to thank Verdell and Sabrina Jones for their kind words and support. That was unexpected, and to those in public comment, that was really moving. Thank you. Because of the pandemic, collecting signatures from my neighbors was some of the most enjoyment and socialization I've had in months. Even showing up today excites me, if nothing else, but to continue the process of trying my best to represent them. The hearing initiated by the objector today appears to attempt to use the election code, which is designed to make elections fair, to wrongfully knock a qualified volunteer candidate off the ballot. I am prepared today to represent my case and show I in no way wavered from the Illinois election code, and to say otherwise mischaracterizes Illinois cases of the past and attempts to undermine the rights of signatories in Ward 5. I will discuss my signature collection process and try to keep this all as concise as possible. A reminder that access to a place on the ballot is a substantial right not lightly denied. The Illinois courts have historically favored access and have always guarded the right of voters to endorse and nominate candidates of their choice. I want the voters of Urbana to have a fair election representative of their interests. I will close my opening statement by telling you that all I'm trying to do is make it on the City Council Ward 5 ballot, as the signatory is consciously supported. That's the main reason why I'm here. And again, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to what's next.
Okay. Can we have a stipulation by the parties that this office requires 25 signatures for a name to appear on the ballot? Is that both of your understanding, and would you concur that that's what the law requires?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, you may call your first witness, Mr. Matthews.
All right, our first witness is the respondent candidate, Ms. McDonald.
Ms. McDonald, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, the exhibit number 2 is the objection, and then number 1 is the entire nominating paper packet.
Correct. Exhibit 2 also has the exhibits that you attach to it, so it would also have the nominating petitions, but the clean, separate version of the nominating petitions is Exhibit 1.
Okay. Ms. McDonald, would you please take a look at exhibit number 1, the nominating paperwork?
Yeah, I have it right here. Oh, I know, it's in the middle of it. Yeah, what page?
Page, if you would, please turn to page 1 of your petition sheets.
All right.
Okay. This is the first page of your petition sheets, correct?
Correct.
And does it state Ward 5 or 5th Ward anywhere on this sheet?
It does not.
If you turn to page 2, does it state Ward 5 anywhere on this sheet?
It does not.
If you turn to page 3, does it state Ward 5 on this sheet?
No, it does not.
If you turn to page 4, does it state Ward 5 on this sheet?
No. And for brevity's sake, do you want to just say that none of them say Ward 5 besides page 5?
If you're willing to stipulate to that, that'll make it go
Yeah,
quicker, sure.
that is.
About to ask that. Thank you.
Okay, so, and then page 5 states Urban City Council Ward 5 Alderman in the office, correct?
That is correct.
And that's different than sheets 1 through 4 and 6 through 11, correct?
Correct.
And that's different than is on the statement of candidacy, correct?
Correct. But if we're pointing out differences between statement of candidacy and petition papers, I'd like to point out that there is a space for office and a space for district on the statement of candidacy and only a space for office on the petition papers.
And these are your petition sheets, right?
Correct.
Okay.
As opposed to another candidate?
Right.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so each of these petition sheets, well, we'll take them in 2 different batches. So the petition sheets in sheets 1 through 4 and 6 through 11, they each contain a circulator statement, correct?
Correct.
And each of those circulator statements indicate that the persons who signed were qualified voters of the Democratic Party, correct?
Correct.
And that they were, at the time of the signing of the petition, qualified voters of the Democratic Party and in the political division in which you were seeking nomination/elective office, correct?
Correct.
And you were the circulator for sheets 1 through 8, or yes, 1 through 8, correct?
Correct.
And so you signed each of these sheets numbered 1 through 8 and signed the circulator statement, correct?
Correct.
In which you said, I, Meghan McDonald, do hereby certify that I reside at 502 East Elm Street in the city/village/unincorporated area of Urbana, if incorporated, list municipality that provides postal service, zip code 61802, County of Champaign, State of Illinois, that I am 18 years of age or older, or 17 years of age and qualified to vote in Illinois, that I am a citizen of the United States, and that the signatures on this sheet were signed in my presence not more than 90 days preceding the last day for filing of the petitions, and are genuine, and that to the best of my knowledge and belief, the persons so signing were at the time of signing the petitions qualified voters of the Democratic Party in the political division in which the candidates is seeking nomination/elective office, and that their respective residents are correctly stated as above set forth. Correct?
Correct.
When you sign that, you swore an oath before a notary, right?
Right. Correct.
And that was under penalty of perjury, correct?
Correct.
Turn your attention to page number 2 of the petitions. I'm going to show you what I've marked as exhibit. Is 3 okay?
Yes, that's fine. That's where we are.
Can you keep it?
Oh, yeah, you can go there.
All right.
Council, can you describe that for me, please?
It's, well, is this a ward map of the city of Urbana in black and white?
This is a partial map of Urbana, ward map, as
Did-
far as I can tell in black and white.
Okay. And does it show the entirety of ward number 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any objection to that being admitted into evidence by either party? Well, not the objector, by the candidate.
I would object. I don't see how it's relevant.
Well, my response is
The
that
question is really, is it authentic or not? Does it accurately represent what it's depicting? Its relevance is an evidentiary issue. Whether we give it any weight or not is the evidentiary issue. The question is there something inaccurate about it?
To the best of my knowledge, it's accurate as far as Ward 5 goes.
Okay, so you have no objection
I have no objection on that.
Okay, thank you.
okay. So on page number 2, voter number 8, Natalie DeClerc, is it?
That's what I'm reading, yes.
And she lives at 308 Bar Avenue in Urbana. Is that right?
That's what I'm reading, yes.
Okay. And that's outside of the 5th district. It's actually in the 3rd district, correct? Or the 3rd ward, I should say.
To the best of my knowledge, she was a Ward 5 resident. Objection, is this wasn't part of the original objection packet,
Any
right?
objections as Counselor, Mr. Matthews, did you make any objections as to that any of the signatories of the petitions were outside the district or not registered voters? Did you make any signature objections at all?
We made
No.
objections in regards to the petitions themselves being confusing, and therefore, and specifically that you couldn't tell which ward she was running for. And she's made a statement under oath that all of these people are member or residents of the ward in which she's running for. And this is one of the people who she has sworn is a person who lives in the ward in which she's running. So I'm asking her about that.
I'll allow the questioning in the evidence, but you're not allowed to amend your objection in any manner. And so to the extent that you're trying to disqualify individual signatures on the petition, that would not be allowed. But you can make your case.
Definitely understood. It's not for that purpose.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So 308 Bar Avenue. You know where that is on Exhibit 3? I'm showing you what I've marked as exhibit number 4. Could you take a look at that, please, and let me know when you're finished?
I'm finished.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Ms. McDonald, did you answer his question related to, do you see that address on Exhibit 3?
Oh, I did answer it. I did not see the address on
Okay.
Exhibit 3.
That's what I thought, but I was double checking. Okay, go ahead. You have Exhibit 4, which is what, Counselor?
It's a Google map for 308 Bar Avenue.
308 Bar Avenue. Okay. Does it have a picture of whatever's there on it? Is that what you're talking about?
It does have a, I don't know if you can see this, but it has a picture of a house, it looks like.
Okay. I just want to make sure I knew what we were looking at. Okay.
Okay. So is this a map depicting the location of 308 Bar Avenue?
Yes.
And is 308 Bar Avenue west of Cunningham Avenue?
Yes.
And that would be in the 3rd ward, correct?
Yes.
All right, turning your attention to page number 8. So Sarah Roper is line number 1, correct?
Correct.
And she lives at 404 West California Avenue, is that correct?
Correct.
And Christina Parks also lives at 404 West California Avenue, correct?
Correct.
And that is outside of the 5th ward, correct?
I actually am not sure on those two. I have double checked those two multiple times. The the ward map posted on the Urbana website is kind of hard to read. So I did sign these petitions to the best of my knowledge.
And that these 2 people resided in the political division in which you were seeking nomination, correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
So when you signed this, you knew which political division you were running in, correct?
Correct.
And this is a verification that these 2 people lived in the political division in which you were running, right?
It says that to the best of my knowledge and belief that the person so signing. So,
And you saw the address?
yes, and I double checked the ward maps, and to the best of my knowledge, they were falling into Ward 5. It's, if you look at the ward map, you can see that it's this one part where it juts out around the library and the Lincoln Square Mall. And so it's right outside of Ward 5, I believe. But like I said, to the best of my knowledge, they lived in Ward 5, but we'll see.
So none of your petition sheets which you submitted correctly state that the name and the location of the office, correct?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
None of the petition sheets which you submitted have a correct depiction of the title and district of your office that you're seeking, correct?
district isn't listed on the petitions. District is only listed on the statement of candidacy.
Well, I'm asking, do any of your petitions correctly state the title and political division of the office in which you are seeking?
Counsel, if you could just ask her what's there, I think that might be easier. I think she's having a trouble with correctly sounds like a legal conclusion that you might be making. If you could just ask her what's there.
Okay.
Thank you.
None of the sheets which you submitted specify, strike that. None of the sheets you submitted specify both Fifth Ward aldermen of the city of Urbana, correct?
Correct.
Anything else? All right. I have nothing further for this witness.
Do you have other witnesses?
No, I have some electoral board decisions of the city of Chicago and copies of the cases we cited that I'd like to submit.
That'd be fine. I think we're probably going to need to have a bit of a discussion as far as case law. I may have some questions for you about some cases too.
Okay. I guess for the record, I could just ask the court, or excuse me, force of habit. I could just ask the tribunal to take judicial notice of I'll label these with exhibits.
That would be great. Thank you.
Exhibit
We're
5,
we're on 5, yes.
exhibit 6,
Can you tell me what the name of the case is in Exhibit 5, please?
yes. It's a electoral board decision from the Board of Election Commissioners of the City of Chicago. And it's the objections of Kathleen Lamonto and Thomas L. Dosh to the nomination papers of Thomas James Gunderson. And if you'd like the number, the board number,
Just give me the board number. That'll be fine. Thank you.
07-EB-ALD-056. And I am tendering a copy of this to the respondent candidate. There you go. And it's essentially a decision where somebody was running for alderman of the 33rd Ward, and they failed to identify the district in which, the ward in which they were running. They alleged that they carried a document with them telling people which ward they were running in. And this court cited Salgado, which is referenced in our objector's petition, in stating that sheets of the candidates nominating petitions that do not contain the ward number identifying the office the candidate was seeking are, as required by law, are invalid. And the failure to state the office sought on the candidate's nominating petition sheets is a violation of the mandatory requirement, and the nominating sheet is therefore invalid. And so that's exhibit number 5. And then exhibit 6 was a candidate who was running for office of the alderman of the 7th Ward of the City of Chicago.
Counselor, can I have a name for the case or a number?
Yes. The name is Objections of William H. Taylor Jr. to the nomination of Jesse L. Harley, and that's board number ALD-033.
Thank you.
And in this case, the objections alleged, the candidate failed to properly identify the office for which he is seeking election on the nominating petition sheets circulated to voters for signature. And the candidate, according to his statement of candidacy, is seeking office to the office of Alderman of the 7th Ward. On each of the nominating petition sheets circulated to voters for signature, the candidate inserted only the word Alderman in the box reserved for the heading of each petition sheet for the title of the office for which they were seeking election. The nominating petition sheets omitted any identification of the 7th Ward, and the candidate's statement of candidacy, however, did state that the candidate was running for office of the Alderman of the 7th Ward. So we would be offering this into, I guess, asking the tribunal to take judicial notice of this decision where the statement of candidacy was correct, but the petition sheets were incorrect.
Do you have any additional case law, Counselor?
Oh yeah, I'm submitting the decision. So, and then I do have the cases which we cited in the objector's petition, but it's up to the board as well as the hearing officer as to whether they want me to go through it now or in closing. I guess it's a question of, do you want it in evidence?
No, we'll take judicial notice of the decisions that were not reported, decisions that are a little bit more difficult to pull, but I've already pulled the cases cited in your petition. And
Okay.
so I don't think we need you to mark those.
Okay, thank you. Then we have, do you want to be called? Then we have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, so you resting your case at the moment?
Yes.
All right, so let us proceed. Ms. McDonald, with your case, you have any evidence you'd like to bring before the board?
Yes, I do. I have at least 14 notarized affidavits from some of the signatories of Ward 5 that I'd like to submit as Exhibit 7.
Okay, I think, do you want to submit those as a package? I think it might be easier if we just number each of them and then you can refer to them individually if we need to.
Okay.
So we'll start those marking as Exhibit 7. So we need 7, 8, 9, 10.
And we would object as to those as not being relevant to the issue of whether there's a basis for confusion within the petition.
Okay, objection is noted. So I think that takes us from 7 to 20. If you could just give me the last name of, of them in order, we'll label them as Exhibits 7 through 20.
Okay, you want me to do that now?
Yes, please. So Exhibit 7 belongs to just the last name's fine.
Campbell.
Campbell, okay.
And then Horan, Horan.
I'm sorry, Horan, Horan, okay.
Jensen, Jensen.
Okay.
Theobald, Theobald.
Okay.
Balderson, Balderson.
Okay.
Coach, Koch.
Koch, okay.
Romero, Romero.
Okay.
McDonald, Mcdonald.
Okay.
Allen, Allen.
I have that as 15. Okay, 16 would be?
Orr, Orr.
17.
Kotheimer, Kotheimer.
Okay, 18.
Riddell, Ruddell.
Okay, 19,
Rickard, Rickerd,
and 20.
Nagel, Nagel.
And is that all of them then?
That is all the affidavits, yes.
Okay, and can you show those to opposing counsel, please?
Yeah, I've handed them to him.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, I'll give you a minute to review those.
Thank you.
May I continue?
I'm sorry, is Mr. Matthews finished reviewing?
He is finished just now.
Did.
Okay. And Mr. Matthews, you're raising an objection at this point for these documents to be entered into evidence?
Yes, as to relevance as well as hearsay.
Okay. I'm going to let Ms. McDonald present what she wants to present. I think we're in a little bit of a quandary here as we are not allowing witnesses to show up in person at the hearing. Otherwise we would have, been able to issue subpoenas and call these individuals as witnesses. We're sort of during COVID times unable to do so. So I'm going to let her provide the testimony. We'll give it the appropriate weight, and maybe once she's explained the affidavits and their purpose, perhaps you may change your mind and you may not. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. McDonald, please.
Thank you. I will first present these affidavits that I was able to collect yesterday and the day before. I know that this has been a quick process and we're all kind of just trying to stumble our way through it. I'd like to read what the affidavit signs just so that the electoral board knows and anyone listening today.
Ms. McDonald, can I ask you a question? Do all the affidavits basically say the same thing except for the individual's name?
Yes.
And so we don't need to read all 14 of them?
No, I don't need to read all 14. I just want to read one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, nice brevity. All right, so I'll just substitute my name. I, Meghan McDonald, reside at 502 East Elm Street in the city of Urbana, Champaign County, state of Illinois. To the best of my knowledge, I registered to vote with the Champaign County Clerk's office. I, Meghan McDonald, signed a petition for Meghan McDonald to appear on the ballot as a candidate for alderman in Ward 5 of the city of Urbana. the time of the petition, I, Meghan McDonald, understood that the office that Meghan McDonald was seeking to be nominated for as a candidate of the Democratic Party was and still is the office of Alderman of the Ward 5 of the City of Urbana, Illinois, in the consolidated primary election on February 23rd, 2021. I, Meghan McDonald, use this affidavit to verify my intention by signing the petition page for Meghan McDonald to be on the ballot as a candidate for Alderman in Ward 5 of the City of Urbana. I have 14 of these notarized. I have 30 of them in people's hands. And if COVID was not a thing and the library was open and maybe we had one more day, which I work tomorrow, so I wouldn't have been able to show up. But yeah, so maybe if we had more time, I would have been able to get more notarized, but I have 14 today. And I still think that's a pretty impressive number. So my first step in the original signature collecting process was to make a post across social media platforms saying, "Are you registered to vote in Ward 5?" with the large Ward 5 map underneath. These posts were shared widely and I was able to collect my signatures with little to no problems. I've been a resident of Urbana for almost 10 years. I know a lot of my neighbors and fellow Ward 5 residents. I could easily message them or call them on the phone to discuss my possible candidacy and receive their signature. Every step of the way, I was honest and transparent with which ward I was running for and why. I have thought about this candidacy most of 2020. I have been open about my run since the end of September. I began discussing it with friends and family throughout October, and I turned in my signatures at the first available moment to do so in November. I have been open and transparent with my signatories every step of the way, letting them know as much as possible about the electoral process, including information about the hearing today. There was only one legal vacancy in our ward to be signing for. I knew that. My neighbors knew that. They were told and shown the Ward 5 map multiple times and are also informed voters on their own accord, aware of their registration status. To refer back to the objector's original challenge, the objector's petition fails to assert adequate grounds for noncompliance with Section 710 of the Illinois Election Code. The grounds stated in the petition wholly consist of minor technical discrepancies which are unlikely to result in voter confusion and which do not frustrate the underlying purpose of the election code. Notwithstanding the two cases cited in the objector's petition, Sapolsky and Zelgado cases, the weight of Illinois precedent is against objector's argument and the holdings of those cases are mischaracterized therein. The nomination papers substantially comply with the requirements of the nomination statute. Section 710 expressly provides for a substantial compliance rather than a strict compliance. Substantial compliance has been held by Illinois courts to be the applicable standard for all elements of Section 710, and nomination papers with an alleged defect still substantially comply with the statute if the defect is minor and the papers still satisfy the apparent purpose of the statute. And if you would like the original or one of the social media posts as evidence, I can, but I don't know if it's necessary.
If you'd like to admit it, then we need to mark it and you should show it to opposing counsel. So this would be exhibit, I believe we're on 21 now.
21.
And is this a Facebook or Instagram? Like what social?
It's just a Facebook post.
Facebook post. Okay, can you show it?
The top of it, yeah.
Can you show it to opposing counsel, please?
I have, yes.
Oh, okay. And can you, is that your Facebook page?
It is my Facebook page.
Is it what you were referring to in your earlier testimony about?
Yes, it's one. I shared the post on multiple social media forms, but I only printed the Facebook post.
Okay, and counsel, do you have any objection to this being admitted into evidence?
Only as to relevance.
Okay. The exhibit will be admitted over objection of counsel. That's exhibit 21 that I was referring to. We've reserved ruling on exhibits, the affidavit exhibits at this point.
If we are kind of unaware of what's going to happen with the affidavits, do I still have time to submit more?
No, tonight's your hearing. So,
all right, just checking.
Yeah, no, we'll take all evidence tonight and then we'll be done taking evidence.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Did you have additional evidence you'd like to present, Ms. McDonald?
That's it, and that's the closing of my case presentation.
Okay, any rebuttal evidence, Mr. Matthews?
So on the first post that you put out, you had a map on there of the district.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
I'm sorry, were you referring to an exhibit, Mr. Matthews?
Yes, I believe it would be exhibit, what's the last one?
21.
21, exhibit 21.
Okay. Do you have any additional evidence, Ms. McDonald?
No.
Okay. Then I believe that we're ready, almost ready for the closing arguments. I'm
Oh,
gonna,
wait. I had a rebuttal. I thought that,
oh, I'm sorry. Go
is
ahead.
it
No,
time for
that's
that?
what we are. Mr. Matthews, you're finished with rebuttal testimony, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Ms. McDonald, sorry.
It's okay.
Too many M's right now, including mine. You are now entitled to present any rebuttal testimony that you would like to do so.
Okay. I just want to refer to the objectors' cases in the original objection papers.
Okay.
Citing Zapolsky, objector's petition argues that the nomination papers should be invalid as they are likely to confuse voters as to the office sought. However, in Zapolsky, there were numerous vacancies with the same name for which the petitioner could have qualified. The petitioner in that case took advantage of the number of vacancies to increase the number of signatures obtained. Zapolsky is not.
McDonald, could I interrupt you for a minute? Because what it sounds like you might be presenting is your closing argument. And so rebuttal testimony would be anything that the objector raised in their rebuttal testimony that you would like to counteract. And he just asked
My apologies.
No, I'm just trying to help you out.
Yeah, no, it's
Get it in the right order here. So did you have any questions relating to his question about your exhibit 21 and that the post had the map in it? That was all he said on rebuttal. Did you have any reply to that?
No.
Okay. So what you're doing is absolutely correct for closing argument.
Okay, then I'll leave till then. We can move on.
We can move on to that phase. There are additional cases reported and unpublished opinions. Council, I'm interested in both parties' discussion of the Nolan case. So I understand that we've taken judicial notice of some of the Chicago cases that exist, but I believe there's also Nolan, McDonald, People Over Politics, I have Salgado, I have Zapolsky. So if you could make sure that you are addressing those cases in your argument, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so whenever the objector's counsel is ready, we're ready for your closing argument.
Yes. So what we have here is a clear-cut case of a failure to comply with section 7-10 in identifying the office sought. We have a situation where the office is listed in 3 different ways across the nominating petitions. On the statement of candidacy, it's, for the purposes of this, correctly stated. And then in the petitions, it's incorrectly stated, whether it's just alderman with no specificity as to which ward is being the candidate was seeking, or whether it's urban alderman Ward 5, which is on one petition sheet, which is not the correct name of the sheet and is not sufficient under the section alone with that one sheet to actually survive this hearing. So each of the cases that we cited all go back originally to Lewis versus Dunn, where there was a judicial candidate who failed to designate the specific vacancy in their statement of candidacy, but actually specifically stated the vacancy that they sought in their nominating petitions. And in Lewis v. Dunn, the court took a look at what the election board did and decided that the nominating petition, since they had the name of the office and the specific vacancy correct, that controlled, and that the candidates' papers were valid. And there's a public policy reason behind that. And that is that we want people who are signing these petitions to know exactly who they're signing for, what this person is running for, and what ward they're going to be in. And that did not occur here. So the Lewis case was interpreted by Zapolsky, which was essentially the opposite scenario. You had a situation in Zapolsky where it wasn't the statement of candidacy that was faulty, but the nominating petitions were faulty and needed to be signed by registered voters. It was uncontroverted in that case that there were multiple vacancies up for the water reclamation district, and that the petitioners nominating petitions didn't specifically tell the voters which one the candidate was seeking. And so the court, in reviewing this, found that the petitioners nominating petitions failed to comply because the petitions were not free from a basis for confusion as to the office for which they were filed. So to unpack that a little bit, there's multiple vacancies available, and the court has to decide whether on the face of the petitions, people are informed of which vacancy the candidate was seeking. And because the candidate's paperwork did not identify specifically which vacancy the person was seeking, there was a basis for confusion that was shown in that case. So the next case is Salgado, which expands on this a little bit further as we go from Lewis to Zapolsky to Salgado. And in Salgado, there was a situation where the nominating petitions did not list any office whatsoever, except to indicate that a full term of office was sought. And the petitioner had contended that the voters, the petitioner had contended that the voters in the ward in which Marquez was circulating, strike that. According to the petitioner, the voters were unaware as to whether they were signing petitions to nominate Marquez as a mayor, an alderman, a second ward, or an alderman at large. And in response, the candidate asserted that the statement of candidacy listed the correct office, and that therefore, taking nomination papers as a whole, there is no basis for confusion as to the office sought. This was found to be not substantial compliance with section 7-10. And what is that? We're talking about a situation where there's absolutely no notification of the office that's being sought. And the court went into the Lewis case and the two requirements that I brought up at the beginning in my opening, where did the nominating papers as a whole create a basis for confusion as to the office sought, and was the purpose of the nominating paper frustrated because of the errors in the paper. And so the court took a look at Marquez's papers, which had nothing in the statement of candidacy, or nothing in the petitions, and had the correct office in the statement of candidacy. And they found, okay, well, the nominating papers taken as a whole show that Marquez is seeking the office of alderman for the second ward, because you have that in the statement of candidacy, and that there's no conflict or inconsistency there because you have something that's blank and you have something that's correct. So you can't have conflict there because there's an absence on one end. And it stated the nominating petition simply omit the office altogether. And that even though Marquez's nominating petitions do demonstrate initiative because the signatures were obtained, we do not believe that minimal appeal to eligible voters has been shown. So to unpack this a little bit, we have a situation where the papers, if you look at the entire candidate packet, it tells you which office the candidate is running for. But when a voter is presented with a petition, such as this one here, I'm holding up sheet 1, they have no idea what office or which vacancy the person is running for. Now, it says alderman or which ward. There are 7 districts in Urbana, and what's that? 7 wards in Urbana, and it does not state which ward the candidate was seeking office in. And furthermore, she testified that she swore that all of these people lived in the ward that she's seeking office in, but there's in fact at least 2 different wards worth of people who signed these petitions. So when you take those 2 cases together, you look at how they're applied with the 2 Board of Election Commissioners of the City of Chicago decisions, the first being the Lamonto and Dosh decision, where in the 33rd Ward, an alderman only put down alderman for the office which they were seeking, even though they said they carried around something with them that said, I'm running in the 33rd Ward, that was not enough, because applying the difference between Salgado and Zapolsky, it was clear that it's the papers that count. It's not the intentions, it's the papers that count, because these are what we have to inform people of where people are running. If you took a look at the sheet, you took a look at all of the sheets in the nominating papers here, none of them correctly state the office. There's only one sheet that even says Ward 5 on it, and it doesn't correctly list the office. So that's clearly a basis for confusion, because you have inconsistencies in the name of the office, the identification of the district in which the person is running, and that's under Marquez, under Salgado, and under Zapolsky, clearly something that leads to a basis for confusion. And so with that, we're asking the board to strike all of the nominating petitions, as there's a basis for confusion here due to the inconsistencies and the irregularities that are present within the nominating papers. And we're asking that the respondent candidate's name not be printed on the ballot. And I thank you.
Ms. McDonald, you want to deliver your closing argument, please?
Yes. All right, so citing Zapolsky, objector's petition argues that the nomination papers should be invalid as they are likely to confuse voters as to the office sought. However, in Zapolsky, there were numerous vacancies with the same name for which the petitioner could have qualified. The petitioner in that case took advantage of the number of vacancies to increase the number of signatures obtained. Zapolsky is not relevant to this case at hand because only one vacancy is legally relevant to both myself, the candidate, and the voters solicited. The broader rule in Illinois courts is that inexact specificity as to the position sought is a minor defect if there is no basis for confusion. The second case cited by objector, the Salgado case, actually criticizes the overbroad reading the Zapolsky case which objector offers. The Salgado court found that substantial compliance was not met when a candidate fails to include any indication on his petitions as to the office sought and could reasonably have been running for mayor or alderman. Here again, the case is not on point. No reasonable voter who was eligible to vote would fail to understand the intended meaning of Urban City Council Ward 5 alderman. A deviation from the code that is so minor or technical in nature and does not affect the legislative intent to guarantee a fair and honest election is not enough to defeat substantial compliance. There can be no deviation more minor or more technical than that of a single inadvertently omitted letter. Access to a place on the ballot is a substantial right, not lightly denied. The Illinois courts have historically favored access and have always guarded the right of voters to endorse and nominate candidates of their choice. In closing, I want to reiterate that no one was frustrated, no one was confused, and that everyone who signed my petition knew what ward they were signing for. The Illinois cases of the past referenced here to discredit or invalidate my signatures are not applicable. I want to keep this short and sweet so that I may continue to push for fairness and transparency for the citizens of Urbana. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for the parties. Are you familiar with the Nolan case, Mr. Matthews? Nolan versus Cook County Officers Electoral Board?
What were the facts of that case? I could probably tell you. I didn't.
Let's see. The there was no reference to the legislative district in the nominating petitions by Mary Nolan. Oh wait, no, she's a petitioner. Oh, sorry, she's a member of the board. Hold on a minute, I'm trying to find the candidate's name. Oh, it is Mary Nolan. That case looked at the certifications on each page, talking about them being qualified primary electors, which I believe you discussed in your testimony or in your questioning of the candidate and pointed out. Do you need a cite for it?
I found it here.
Okay. Do you find anything distinguishing about that?
Well, the Nolan case predates the Salgado decision.
Correct.
So Salgado would be controlling. And this is, it looks like it's contained to a circulator's affidavit. And a discussion as to whether or not Nolan's circulator's affidavit is devoid as to any reference of the 18th legislative district.
Well, the petition did not reference the 18th district. The question on the circulator's affidavit was the language about that they were qualified primary voters in the subdivision shown, or in the subdivision for which they signed. It's the exact same language as or I believe it's the same language as the candidate exhibited in the case that we're discussing right now. Let's see. Hold on a minute.
I'm a bit confused as to what is going on right now.
I'm sorry, Ms. McDonald. I believe there's additional case law that may be relevant to the matter before us.
So are you offering advice after closing arguments, or?
No, I'm asking objector's counsel if he can distinguish these cases, or if he has any, I'm just trying to clarify what he believes the controlling law is. I'm certainly willing to make the call, but you certainly can offer your comment too if you're aware of this case law. He brought in case law from Cook County, and there may be additional relevant cases that we should discuss. If this is uncomfortable, that's fine. We can move on.
It's uncomfortable. I think it's unfair to prepare on the spot.
No problem. All right, so we have the evidence of the parties. We've had the closing arguments. At this point, we can turn these matters over to the Electoral Board for discussion in accordance with the agenda presented. It's just sometimes as a hearing officer, Ms. McDonald, you have questions and it's a little bit different from a judge in that you're allowed to ask them. Or if this were like on a motion, we would just have arguments and the judge could ask all kinds of questions. But again, we're not in court. It's a little bit looser process. And I apologize if that was confusing to you. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable or confused in any way. So. All right, if we go back to the agenda then, which I just minimized on my screen. So now if the Electoral Board wishes to discuss the cases in open session, we can start with the first one. If you have any questions for me as your legal advisor or the ALJ, I'll be happy to answer those. I can sort of summarize the cases for you if you would like.
I do have a question since there are two objections to the petition. Do we need to rule on both of them or do we rule, how does that work? Does each one get its own ruling?
Each case gets its own ruling, and the issues in the case, I would like your sense. So what needs to happen is you need to give me a sense of what the decision that you feel we should reach is, or I can issue you a recommended decision. But I do believe you need to deliberate what your position is on the cases and give me a sense of what decision you would like to come to. It's probably an inartful way to say it, but you can either just tell me to come back with a recommended decision and you can adopt it or not adopt it. But if you don't adopt it, then we'll have to do another decision. But I think it's appropriate for there to be some public debate and discussion in this case of your sense of the issues and what you believe, which direction you believe, whether the objection should be sustained or overruled in each case. So we probably should take Mr. Jones' case first, the first case, and discuss that. And then you can direct me to issue a recommended written order for you to adopt.
Okay. All right. So the issue up right now is the very first case for Langdorf objection to Jones the third election petition, case number 2020-1. There were two main issues in that case. One was whether a residency requirement had been met for a year in the city of Urbana up to the election, I believe, in April, memory serves. The second piece had to do with the nonpartisan paperwork and whether or not the person was qualified for the Democratic primary. So those are the two issues. Correct me if I missed anything significant.
I think the second issue is whether the petitions meet the statutory requirements of section 7-10. Just to agree with what you said, but I think that might be a little bit more clear.
Okay. All right. Discussion. Bill?
Yes, I've got a question about the verification page. And I know it's been mentioned once, but it does say, at least the copy I've got, State of Illinois and the County of Cook. Ms. Mould, you didn't mention that one other time, something about hybrid or virtual verification. Could you give just further explanation on if this is proper or not?
So what a verified petition does is it allows somebody, if they want to do a motion for summary judgment, particularly, to say you can accept the verified facts as true. The petition raises certain issues. The verification, I think, is less relevant at this point because we've had testimony and the candidate has made certain statements about his residency and where he lived. It would have been during the hearing, it would have been the candidate's job. And again, you know, a lot of these are pro se and they don't have counsel advising them. And while everyone did an excellent job, a counsel might have raised that issue during the hearing to say, okay, what were the circumstances and why was this notarized in Cook County? I tried to offer him an explanation because I believed he was confused. It's not, I don't think it's relevant to the issue because he didn't raise that issue in the hearing. He didn't object to it until after his closing argument. And so it's not really an issue in front of the election commission in the case.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I guess just as a matter of discussion, quote unquote discussion, I guess just the only point that I would make is the respondent, at least it appeared to me, admitted that he was not a resident of Urbana within the timeline that is required by law. That's a big takeaway for me, that he himself admitted that he did not comply with the legal requirements to be a candidate for mayor in the city of Urbana during this election cycle.
Phyllis, any commentary?
I actually agree with Mr. Colebrook. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Jones was in my neighborhood on the very last day of filing as I was leaving, and I signed his petition, but I didn't look at it to see what it says. but I did sign it because I thought that he would be a good candidate, and he probably would. However, when I got here and saw the petitions and saw that it was nonpartisan, that kind of, I'm thinking, okay, he's got these from someplace else, and he did not go online to pull the information for what it takes to run for office in the city of Urbana. I had no idea at that time that he was not in the city long enough to be able to run for office. I've been in this position as city clerk for a long time and have always made it a very important part of my job as the local election authority that deals with the municipality to always be above board in what it is that the candidates turn into me. And one of the things that I was a very stickler about is that you meet the requirements of being in the city for 1 year prior to running for office. And I'm just really sad that Mr. Jones didn't meet that requirement. So I would have to say that, I think his petition should be pulled.
All right. I don't know exactly how these hearings typically go during city council meetings. If the chair has something to say, we have to move the chair. Deanna, do you know, can I state my opinion without giving the chair to somebody else?
Yes, you may.
Okay. All right. I concur. I feel that the fundamental question, I mean, we have age limits and so forth. One of them is, where do you live? And it's very clear that you have to live in the jurisdiction in which you are running for at least a year. By my take from the testimony is that Mr. Jones admitted that he had not lived within a year. The second piece, in terms of whether or not the paperwork that he had filled out qualifies him to be added to the Democratic primary in February, there were numerous things which indicated to me that he was not requesting to be added to the Democratic primary, since the election that he filed for was in April. So with those two reasons, I think that his name should not appear on the Democratic primary in February.
Okay.
Bill, sorry, Deanna, Bill has another comment.
Yeah, I would just concur with that last comment that you made about the election that he was seeking according to his paperwork. It clearly says April. It does not indicate the primary as well.
Okay, I will draft up a written order in accordance with that, and that would also be my recommendation in this case, that, unfortunately for Mr. Jones, I believe he failed under section 7-10 of the election code and failed to meet the residency requirement at this time. Okay, so let's discuss the second case then.
All right, so the next item for discussion is case number 2020-2, Williams' objection to McDonald election petition. Comments and thoughts?
Would you like some legal analysis of this prior to?
It's a little complicated. Yes, I think that would be great if you'd start us off with that.
Okay, so I think both the candidate and the objector correctly stated that the election law defaults to the candidate is on the ballot unless an error is shown in the petitions. And I believe the Lewis versus Dunn case that was discussed, that the 2 points that the question are correct question. This is an Illinois Supreme Court case, by the way. The correct question is whether you frustrated the, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pull the two issues here. I don't want to misstate them. Took a lot of notes, sorry. You look at the petition papers as a whole, okay? And the question is whether the purposes of the election code are frustrated. I'm going to be a little inartful here, I apologize. And then whether, and sort of whether the voters are confused, and if that frustration would lead you to conclude, this is not from the case, but whether that would lead you to conclude that the voters would be frustrated and not understand the nature of who they had signed a petition for or what they were running for. And I think that in Chicago, historically, a lot of the Chicago cases on aldermanic issues, when they fail to put the district for when they're running for alderman, the Chicago Electoral Board has traditionally said, okay, we're not going to put them on the ballot. They didn't put the district in. And so to that extent, those cases are correct. There are some other cases downstate that don't necessarily turn out that way. And again, we are not the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. And while you can take notice of those cases, they're not like official precedent that makes you decide this case one way or another. And I'm not really sure we have precedent on point in the 4th District that addresses this issue where we are located. So I agree that the Chicago Officers Electoral Board would say this person would not appear on the ballot. There's some other case law that was not cited by either party that I was asking Objectors Counsel about to see if he had a way to distinguish it, because I think it's instructive in this situation. There's a case called People Over Politics Party versus Orland Park Municipal Officers Electoral Board that is a 2019 case in the 1st District. So it's newer than the authority that he cited for Chicago. And basically it indicates that it's looking at the heading and the footer of the petition circulation pages and saying that if people are representing that they're qualified voters in that district and the candidate is representing the circulator is representing that the people were qualified voters in the district, then that may be enough. The court concluded that, let's see, Illinois has a strong public policy in favor of providing ballot access. They found that the candidate in this case had substantial compliance and prevented the removal from the ballot. And I want to give you the specific facts that what this candidate did. So this candidate listed trustee, I think, on their nominating petitions. So they were saying that this could be an Orland Fire Park or Fire Protection District or the Village of Orland Park. But it was correctly stated on, I believe, the statement of candidacy. They mentioned a library trustee, but what it turned out is that most of the officials, the other trustee designations were in a nonpartisan election, and that there was only one possible office for election in the trustee as a trustee for this election. And so because the individuals knew they were qualified voters, that the fact that the office was not named specifically was not a violation of the election law. There's a few other cases which I'm happy to sort of cite, but I think this case is a close call in my opinion. And so I think the misspelling of urban versus Urbana is probably not really relevant. The question, when you take the petitions as a whole, the statement of candidacy states the district, and at least one of the petition pages does. I would tend to disregard the affidavits because they are hearsay. I think that the client or that the candidate, could testify and say, this is what I did when I circulated them. And certainly she did that with the Facebook post, said she had posted that she was running in Ward 5. And so, again, I think this is going to have to be up to a sense of the board. But I think this case in particular could go either way.
Thank you. I do have a quick question about hearsay. If it's a notarized statement, what is the difference between a notarized statement and hearsay?
So it's an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter is essentially what the definition of hearsay is, okay? And so this written statement was not made under oath in the proceeding. It was made outside the proceeding, and it was designed to represent the truth of the matter, i.e. this is how I circulated, this is what she told me when I circulated petitions where you could call a witness and that they could testify to a conversation. This affidavit is hearsay because it's not somebody in court where you have an opportunity to cross-examine them and have them state what they're trying to say. So I think she provided some testimony about what she had put on Facebook and gave us a copy of that and sort of authenticated that. We didn't have an objection from opposing counsel to that being admitted. I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, we have the affidavits, but I'm not sure they're dispositive of the issue. I don't think that makes you decide one way or the other. I guess I would.
And then I guess my one question that multiple people have brought up is the statement of candidacy versus the primary petition. In the statement of candidacy, there is listed in the boxes name, address, office, district, and party. In the general primary petition, it says name, address, and office. So is there any case law that distinguishes why a box for district was not included on the primary petitions, on the state primary petitions?
I think that was a form choice probably. Let me look at something real quick. I think if you look, there are different petition forms out there. You know, and again, you can't tell everybody, hey, you ought to have a lawyer look at these. Hold on a minute. I'm looking on the State Board of Elections website. Primary petition. I think this says general primary petition. I think it might be a different form than one would typically use.
Can I, clerk, I believe this is the form that was handed out. Is that correct?
Yes, and it came from the battery of forms that the State Board of Elections had for these particular.
I'm actually
all right.
incorrect.
I just wanted to confirm it was the form that you were circulating.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm incorrect on that issue. They don't have a different form in there they're just using that one. But so in your notice of elections for the city of Urbana, on the website, it tells you council member Ward 1, council member Ward 6. Those are technically what should go into the office slot if you were going to be exact, right? That you would put the ward number. And so the question is whether this is substantial compliance. The question is whether this frustrates the purposes of the election code in having signers understand who they're signing for and what office they're running for.
All right, I've dominated enough. Bill.
Yeah, I guess I've got a question regarding the case law, and I'll get that to that point here in a second. But the objectors' counsel at least seemed to me to make a compelling argument by when Ms. McDonald only listed aldermen and did not list the ward, made an argument when on page 2, number 8, the person on bar was out of the ward, and then on page 8, the two signatures on that page were out of the ward as well. So he presented that as case law and in his primary case. But Ms. Moole, you're saying that even though other case law was not referenced, you say that we should consider other case law that wasn't even brought up in the testimony that is quote unquote, I guess, more relevant than a Cook County case versus a downstate case?
Correct. So when you have a question of law, that's for any tribunal, that's a de novo review, meaning it's a new issue. You're not required to rely on what the parties say. You can look at reported case law to make your decision in accordance with the facts. If you have a question of fact, you're really limited to what you're presented to at the hearing. But if it's a question of what, we kind of know what the facts are, right? We know that the petitions don't say Ward 5 except for on page 5, and that there's a missing A on page 5, but the statement of candidacy does have that. Those are the facts. We know that. So the question is, how does the law apply to those? And you as the tribunal are allowed to look at the law and say, okay, this is what the law says. And while I was trying to discuss some of the law with the objectors counsel, it's not required that we do that. And we can certainly say, okay, we all agree what the facts are, but when you apply the law, it's a little bit different. This is the answer. Did that make sense? Did that explain that? You're not bound by what they say about the law. Because the law is the law.
It does. I guess that would then bring me to my second question. If we're going to discuss the law, does the law require in that box where it says office, should it say the ward?
Oh. I would say that there's differing case law.
That's what we, exactly. And
So
what case law are we supposed to apply?
Well, I think what you have to figure out in your minds is, did the voter understand what office they were trying to nominate this person for? That perhaps that's kind of the ultimate question. Did when someone signed the petition, did they understand what office they're trying to elect someone for, or did it frustrate the election process in that they didn't have any idea what this person was running for?
Okay, that makes sense. And just for the record as well, page 5, to me, the misspelling of Urbana is, although maybe a technicality, it's a non-issue for me. When I read that, it still says, Urbana City Council, even though the A is missing. I think that is a technicality that should not cause the signatures from page 5 to be tossed. The only thing that I'm wrestling with, obviously, is the other pages, because of that infamous box, whether it's form failure or not, but that box that says, in office, it just says alderman and not the ward that's indicated.
Regardless of what the decision is with urban versus Urbana, there are enough signatures, even if that page is cut out, because I think that everybody agreed that 25 signatures was required. From my standpoint, I feel like if we were in the city of Champaign, this might be a different question. And the reason is there's at-large seats. City of Urbana only has 7 wards, which are geographically bound. And because of that, there is only one office that the person is qualified to run for, which is Ward 5. So I understand the confusion in the form. I would like to feel like we are open to a variety of people running for office. And so I'm leaning towards denying the objection. Phyllis?
I'm running for office too. And I think that everybody deserves an opportunity to run for an office if that's what they choose to do. I would not have pulled an objection to this petition simply because of that. Like you said, everybody in Ward 5 knows who it is that's running for that ward. She circulated those petitions in her neighborhood, and they know her. So I concur with what it is that you're thinking. I do. I think that the objection should be thrown out.
Bill, any thoughts?
And in general, I agree with that. But, with my history in, professional life, I like to lean on case law, and case law is, at least at this point, uncertain. And I just would like to have a little bit more clarity on what the case law that applies to this case would be, the most relevant case law.
And I'm certainly open to hearing more from Deanna in terms of relevant case law that could help direct this. I suppose it sounds to me like you have 3 people that are, one's leaning one way and 2 are leaning the other way, but it does sound like there is some question about case law.
I think the most instructive case for you is probably this People Over Politics Party versus Orland Park Municipal Officers Electoral Board. And why I say that is because the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners' decisions have never been to court, right? It's an identical body to you. unless they're appealed, they're not, they're just the decision, the decision of the electoral board. No judge has actually ruled on them. This People Over Politics Party case versus Orland Park Municipal Officers Electoral Board that I was citing to you is a March 8th, 2019 order by the first district, which is also Chicago, right? So this is the appellate court in the first district, which would be, it would overrule really any Chicago electoral board decision that it conflicted with. I'm not saying that all the past electoral board decisions are overruled. What I'm saying is that this case it's a stronger, should be more influential to you than an electoral board decision, because this is an appellate court decision. And what it says is that you can look at that introductory language and the circulator language, and people in that language, people are representing that they're qualified primary voters of hold on, I'll get the exact language. They're qualified primary voters of, I have too much paper now.
Well, I can spare you the effort. What you've said so far explains it to me and tips the scale. I would concur with the other two electoral board members that I believe that the ruling case law should allow the signatures.
Okay, so my understanding is I am to draft up two recommended orders for the board to adopt. The first would be to grant the objection or sustain the objection to the nominating petitions of Virgil Jones based on the grounds that he does not qualify under the municipal code to have been a resident of Urbana for 1 year prior to election, and that his nominating petitions do not comply with 7-10 of the election code. And the second recommended decision that you would like would be to overrule the objection or deny the objection to the nominating petitions of Ms. McDonald based upon the case law that we've discussed.
I concur. Does everybody else concur?
Yeah, I concur.
Do you need a vote, or is this just
No, you will vote on
just direction that we're giving you?
You're just giving me direction, and I was trying to clarify it. So you would vote on the recommended decision or to adopt or not adopt the decision in front of you. You would need to recess your hearing then to allow me time to draft those, and then you can officially adopt them.
Okay, and if we recess the hearing, we have to do so within 24 hours. So if we met tomorrow at 5 or 5:30 via Zoom, would that satisfy that requirement? I don't know if that gives you enough time to draft it.
I think I can get it done. I'll get it done from whatever you tell me. The later in the day is possible. We have, I believe, 24 hours from now. But let's not. We don't want to do that. 5 p.m. is fine. It's actually earlier than the call today, so it's certainly either when we end it or beginning. It would be less than 24 hours away. So if we want to do it at 5 o'clock tomorrow, I'm open at that time and can have your recommended decisions to you prior to that for your review.
And if we conduct this via Zoom, since it's a final vote, is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I can make myself available 5 p.m. tomorrow.
All right, then we will have a final vote at 5. We will recess and reconvene tomorrow via Zoom at 5 p.m. This will be on the same Zoom link.
Do we need a motion to recess until tomorrow at 5 via Zoom?
It won't hurt, but it looks like Jim's trying to get to speak.
I believe you will need one person in the council chambers.
Oh, yeah, okay. You are correct, due to the governor's order. So I will be here via, everybody else can, actually, you're here. Phyllis will be here.
I'm right around the corner.
All it takes is one.
Thank you for that reminder, Jim.
Okay.
So we need, let's see what's next on the agenda. We had discussion and proposed schedule if needed. So I guess I need a motion to go into recess and reconvene via Zoom at 5 p.m. tomorrow.
I will offer a motion to recess today's meeting and reconvene tomorrow at 5 p.m. via Zoom.
All right, moved by Bill and seconded by Phyllis. There's only three of us. I don't think we need discussion. Would you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Phyllis Clark, yes.
All right. So all three of us agreed to reconvene, and we will see everybody via Zoom at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everybody coming in.
Thank you.
You should hold on.